Hello, I'm Duglas T Stewart, and beside me is Lavinia Blackwall. And lovely to see you today.
And hats off to you, dear.
Yeah, hats off, and I'm saluting you as well. The first thing I guess I wanted to ask you about, because I don't know this, and that's a good reason to ask, what was your first sort of musical love or passion? What made you realise that music was something that was important to you?
I think it was singing, the enjoyment of singing. Like, my mum used to always sing to me, and my dad used to always play the organ in the house. And I was involved in a lot of singing from an early age. Like, my mum got me singing lessons when I was about 7, and I really got into it and really enjoyed singing. And then as I went through school, I was like head chorister in the choir, and I got exposed to a lot of that kind of classical side of music. But then as I grew older, when I was sort of, I don't know, about 12, I started taking much more an interest in popular music. And for me, one of the first things I remember liking for some reason was Edwyn Collins. And then A Girl Like You, because I heard it on the radio. I was like, that sounds strange. There's something about that I like that's not pop music that I'm used to. There's something about it that's different. And I started taking an interest in things that were slightly, I suppose, different from the mainstream kind of
I
pop
guess
music. And
the thing about Edwin as well is he has such an unusual and distinct voice.
Yeah.
And if you were coming from maybe a more traditional singing thing, people go, is that singing? I mean, I think it's wonderful singing.
I think it's great, yeah. And I like the riff and everything about it. It was the whole song. And it's a great pop song. But I mean, I just have a very distinct memory of that particular point in my life of like saying, no, I don't want to listen to whatever everyone else was listening to at that point. I can't even remember. But and just being drawn into starting to listen to John Peel in the evenings and starting to listen to other forms of music that were not kind of what you'd hear on the radio all the time, and taking an interest in actively seeking it out. And I suppose like my first kind of passion music, like the band that I really loved Blur to start with, but then the band that really made me really kind of open my ears was Gorky's Zygotic Monkey.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I was obsessed with them, really obsessed with them.
They combine, I guess, certain, I guess, genre or whatever, or styles, I guess, although I would say a lot of music you've done is very different, but certainly a lot of the things you've cover some of the similar fusion of genres, kind of folk and kind of theatrical stuff and psychedelic stuff, even prog.
Yeah, I love all these things. Maybe less the musical theatre, but I mean, you didn't say musical theatre, you said theatrical. I put those words into the ether there, but
yeah. I wasn't thinking so much the Phantom of the Opera. I was thinking something more theatrical, which isn't necessarily musical theatre as such.
Yeah. Funny you should say that, though. I was really into Phantom of the Opera when I was very young, so maybe it's kind of fed its way in there somehow in a kind of ghostly fashion.
Well, one of the things that I think's interesting, you were saying that the first thing that you really fell in love with was the notion, I guess, of singing. And I mean, I've heard people say, or the notion that the voice is the purest and sort of the greatest of all instruments, and to a certain extent, all other instruments are almost trying to, in some way, replicate the beauty of the voice.
That's interesting.
Do you think there's anything in that?
I think that's an interesting... I suppose the voice is the first instrument before anything else, because if you think about the evolution of humans, I suppose their voice is the first thing that you use and the first thing that you can communicate with. And I suppose percussion as well is another form of early kind of expression. And so I suppose those two things are pretty primal. So yes, in a way, but I don't see the voice as above any other instrument at all. And I think one of the criticisms I had when I was on my early music course was that I was trying to turn my voice into an instrument rather than focus on emotion. And I used to always try and make a particular sound or try and mimic a certain style, or your certain decorations or whatever you're trying to. And it depends what type of music you're talking about, but I think with some forms of music you end up with the voice mimicking the instruments, and I think it can go both ways. I think you can use the voice as a kind of primal, kind of expressive tool of your own kind of being, but at the same time I think it can be something else entirely, and then some other times I think it can be something that's outside of yourself completely.
I think so. I mean, I guess in part of singing can also be even for, I think, spiritual people or people that perceive themselves being non-spiritual, there's also something, well, I would say spiritual about it. It's almost something that takes you to a different place where it becomes almost mantra-like and you almost go into a kind of different state.
Absolutely, yeah. I think there's something really special about just letting yourself go, and it's almost like flying, you know, if you're able to let something soar and just, especially if you have a beautiful piece of music to sing. I suppose I really felt this with a lot of the choral music I was doing, a lot of the early music. Just letting yourself, it's almost like something comes out of you, and it's sorry, I sound really cheesy, but it's this wonderful kind of sensation of almost being able to fly. I feel like it is. It's like a kind of it's a really wonderful experience. Yeah.
And also, I think for me, and I don't know if it's the same for you, but I've heard other people saying this. I mean, if I'm doing a concert and I actually start to think about what I'm doing, whether that's me going, what's the next line? Then I usually get into real trouble. But if I actually almost remove myself from the brain and just let me follow my natural path, then it usually ends up kind of good and special.
Yeah, for sure. I think, there's that definite kind of thing if you're thinking, if I'm thinking about the next line, or I'm worried about the way this is sounding, or, you know, it will go wrong. It always does. It's a bit like, I can't remember who told me this, but someone told me that, you know, if you hold a cup of coffee as you go up the stairs and look at the coffee to make sure it doesn't spill, it will spill. Whereas if you hold the coffee and look at the stairs, the coffee will be fine and it won't spill. But it's true. Have you ever tried it?
Well, I totally get that. I think that's the thing. It's almost like, I guess it's a bit like standing on the edge of a pier. Now, this actually hasn't happened for me. But if I actually start thinking about, this is a bit dangerous, I start to get feeling like I'm getting pulled over. Well, if I just look and go, this is pleasant, look at the sea, look at the boats.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if it's 100% related. But we talked a little bit almost about, I guess, these primal things that are in us for making music. And I guess in some ways, most animals make almost their own music as well. Is that related to something I know you know quite a lot about, and I don't know so much about, the origins of what people might talk about as early music?
Well, I suppose when people are talking about early music, it's in a kind of conventional sense. I guess it's defined as from roughly, it was ages ago since I did my master's now, so I'm going to get shot by people that actually know what they're talking about. But maybe from about 1400 through to the Renaissance. So that kind of period, and Purcell and Handel is a bit later as well. So I guess you're talking about pre-classical in terms of the and the stuff that was actually written down in that period. You know, so the further back you go, there's less stuff written down because obviously people didn't write as much and things don't survive as much. So there's a huge wealth of early music. I guess medieval's a bit earlier than that. So I guess it's an umbrella term for a whole genre of music.
Yeah. So there is earlier music, but is there something that happened around about that time? Whether it was new instruments that were made or whether it was to do with recording as in writing down the music that changed?
Well, I guess a lot of the very early music that's recorded was only surviving because it was in monasteries, and monasteries were the only places where education happened. So, and that's where writing happened. So there are people like Hildegard von Bingen, who was a famous abbess who was a visionary as well, and knew loads about herbs, and obviously all the things that she did at the Abbey were part of that. And she also wrote some beautiful, beautiful pieces of music that are quite rare to have a woman's piece of music from that far back. But obviously she was an abbess, so she was in a nunnery. It is a nunnery, isn't it?
Get ye to a nunnery.
Get ye to a nunnery. But yeah, so I guess a lot of that, the surviving music that we have is from what we can see is written down, and then you have to try and decode what it actually means because it's written in a completely kind of different format from the way that we write music now. So there's a whole kind of translation of like, what does this actually mean? And there are no bar lines, and what would the tempo be? And so a lot of like your kind of interpretation of very early music is based on not very much really, other than what you think it might be. And I suppose that then comes into, well, how do I feel as a human when I try and sing it? But then you have to contextualise the fact that the people that were living then and the way that you're living now were very different. So the way that they felt and the way that you feel and the way that you express one feeling or another might be completely different from the way that they would have expressed something. So the idea of authenticity is very difficult to kind of pinpoint, if you see what I mean.
And is that music that, apart from in a kind of academic or almost scientific way, I can appreciate or feel a connection with as much as music that's much more contemporary to you?
I suppose if you're talking about kind of chant and that kind of early stuff, I suppose it has a place. But I mean, I suppose popular music of that time would have been different, but it's just not recorded. So the later you go on, you start to get sort of broadside ballads and things that people did have that, you know, most people would enjoy. You have the music of the court that will sometimes reflect something that's been going on in the town, or, you know, with other kind of greater echelons of society. They'll feed back into something that's been written down, and you get little glimpses of what people were actually doing, you know, in town criers and that kind of stuff. And I suppose a lot of folk music, or the folk music that we have now, or what we understand as folk music, I suppose the most early recorded forms of folk music that you have from broadside ballads and things like that, I suppose, are a reflection of the contemporary music of that time. And sorry, I'm losing my train of thought here. So yeah, your question was
it's just that thing of the feeling a connection, because sometimes I'll hear songs that I find are actually 18th century and 19th century, and I feel a real connection with them. But probably most of the music I connect with most is probably from kind of early 20th century onwards.
Yeah.
You know, some music hall things and some kind of folk songs that are kind of attributed to around about that time, and then the kind of Great American Songbook or whatever. But maybe that's just because I don't actually know much of this other music, so I feel less of a...
It could be. I always find that there's always huge swathes of music that I've never heard, and I always see that as a lovely thing, because if there's something I don't like at the moment now, chances are maybe in 20 years' time I'll enjoy it, because there's loads of stuff in the past that I haven't liked, and I've thought, that's S-H-I-T, you know, and then I'll come back to it and be like, oh, I really love that, you know.
I know. Oh, yeah,
so it's
definitely.
like, I think that's wonderful. I suppose what I really love about kind of Renaissance and sort of early music, I suppose, because I was exposed to a lot of it, I took a lot of interest in it anyway for some reason. I don't know what drew me to it. I think it was just the idea that it was something from such a long time ago. It was so different from contemporary classical music. The chord sequence, the kind of chords are different, the kind of harmony's different, kind of appealed to my ear. There's a lot of fifths, and I don't know, there's just something about it I really loved. And
do you bring that into your own writing, music still?
Probably without realising it, yeah. I don't think I consciously try and make anything sound medieval, but I think, or early music-y, or whatever, but I think things probably feed their way in just because you're drawn to particular sounds or chords or progressions. I always recognise it in other people, you know. I'm like, oh, Marco, you always do that. You know, you always do that little tony thing. Or I'll notice, like, in Mike Hastings' guitar playing, he always does a twiddly thing, because maybe that's the way. There's these little patterns that people have that are little signatures of who they are. And I think you recognise it in other people. So I probably do it as well, and don't see it yet in myself, but I probably do. But
so do you always write at an instrument?
When I'm getting the nitty-gritty of it down, yeah. But no, I quite often write when I'm driving in the car.
Yeah, so it starts maybe with melodic ideas.
Yeah, I'll have like a melodic idea, and then I'll start thinking of all the parts and how I want it to sound, and like how I want the rhythm to go and this kind of thing, and it'll be quite vague. That's one way of it happening, and then I'll sort of sing it into my phone, and then I'll either forget about it or I'll go back to it later and then sort of think, right, that's worth having a little look at, and kind of pick it out on the piano. So that's the kind of rudimentary, kind of straightforward way that I've been going about things. And then really lucky to have like Marco and Seb and Jim. But Marco's been really good at kind of producing the ideas and saying, right, have you thought you could maybe extend that a bit, or maybe you could add another section in there, or do you think there should be some more harmonies over this, or have you thought about adding some flutes or whatever? And I'll be like, oh, it doesn't need it, you know. But like, well, just give it a go anyway. And then I'll go, oh, actually, I quite like that, you know. So I really enjoy working with other people once I've got the kind of initial bit done. I find I like the freedom of the initial bit being just me, because it gives me the freedom to do what I want, you know, and not have to compromise at that stage.
I think it's quite interesting, because I don't think there's that many songwriters who start not on an instrument. You know, Burt Bacharach, he has that thing, and you were talking about people drifting towards certain patterns. And I don't think it's always a bad thing, because sometimes one of the things that attracts you is you hear someone's signature style, and you make a connection because you go, oh, I like that signature style. But something like Burt Bacharach, he says, well, you start writing a melody away from an instrument, and then you're less likely to gravitate to the same patterns and things because you could almost end up going anywhere.
Yeah, that is interesting, isn't it? I think it's a mixture, because sometimes like I'll sit down at the piano and start writing something and think, well, I need to write a song because I've got to write 3 more songs just now. So I'll start working on something and a song will come that way. But yeah, it's interesting. I think there's much more freedom to be able to be away from instrument, like you're saying with Burt Bacharach saying that. I think that's totally true, because the only thing you have to do is remember it. But the wonderful thing about now is you have mobile phones and you can just sing it into your phone and then it comes back to you.
No, do you know what I used to do because I'm not an instrumentalist, and when I came up with melodies and kind of little counter melody ideas, I discovered people wouldn't need to do this, but some people now have little record players again. I have a record player, obviously. I used to put the stylus in my mouth because there was usually a tape deck attached. Wow. And I discovered if you put the stylus in your mouth and kind of sang the melody really, really loudly, because I didn't have a mic, it would record. So like
that's so clever.
I would give things like demos to like Sean and Norman, my friends who were my early collaborators of me, kind of go, and sometimes they'd go, I can't quite make out the notes, but it was enough to...
It was enough to trigger your memory of what you were... Yeah, that's amazing. That's brilliant.
I don't think anybody will probably be needing to do that task.
No, but it's so inventive of you to think of doing that. I think that's fantastic. That's wonderful.
It was to do with, I think, I realised it was all to do with vibration. I thought, well, maybe that would work. And it did, but you had to do it really loud.
That is amazing.
It sort of sounded as if I'd been like wrapped up with tape and I was going to go,
oh gosh. Have you still got any of those tapes?
I mean, they would be valuable.
Yeah, they would.
But unfortunately, I think they've all probably been destroyed by now or withered away.
Or played over and over again till...
Or somebody's taped some chart hits in it.
Oh,
talking of chart hits, and this is kind of a little bit kind of jumping ahead, it feels that since you've left Trembling Bells, that you've sort of, and I don't even know exactly what this means, but your songs and music that you're now making, it's a bit more pop.
Yeah.
Is that a deliberate thing, or?
I think I just prefer that kind of music. I think I'm trying to write music that I would like to listen to. And a lot of the music I listen to, like I love all the kind of Kinks, and I suppose I grew up liking Blair for a while. But I suppose, I'd like to listen to. Basically, when I make records or when I put it on, I listen back and go, oh, I really like that, So I suppose that's just been me kind of just trying to write what I want to hear. And that's not me, because it doesn't always come out the way you want it to anyway. It changes anyway. But I think I'm definitely more kind of drawn to pop stuff. And I feel that with the Bells, I suppose because for such a long time we'd been doing music that was so, I suppose, not pop, quite... Well, some of the songs were slightly, but, it definitely wasn't pop music. And I don't think it should have been. But yeah, I think it's maybe me sort of getting to write my own stuff and do what I want, which is kind of, I think that's the way I am at the moment. I might change, I might start writing. No, I probably won't actually. I don't.
And so coming out of, I mean, I obviously wasn't in the band, so I don't know what the makeup was, but I guess there's certainly from the outside, it felt like the notion of, it was the Trembling Bells, although there was like these big contributors and like kind of big talents, in many ways it was Alex's thing. Alex Nielsen, it was his sort of thing, and that was 10 years, and so it was. I'm guessing that obviously there was a lot of good things. I'm not trying to do a thing, but I guess it comes a point where does it feel almost like I need to express my thing now in my way.
I think so, yeah. And I mean, to be, to give Alex credit, like he was always saying, "Oh, if you've got an idea, bring it to the table." I'd like, But I think I felt very much though, actually, no. If I want to do my idea, I want it to be my thing, because I didn't see how it would really fit into that context, because it wouldn't really fit, because the stuff I'm doing is so different from what the Bells is doing or were doing, and I felt like it was a melting pot. Although it was very much Alex's songwriting, lyrically and melodically. as a band, we all kind of played about with it quite a bit in terms of like, well, what chords we're doing and what, and changed things. I felt like it became towards the end much more of a kind of group in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
It started off being, he was very, I want it like this, I want it like, I suppose, but then again, we were all kind of, I wrote a lot of the songs with Alex because he would sing me the stuff and then I'd pick out all the chords and we'd work it through it like that. And then as the band kind of developed, it became more of a group thing. So in a lot of ways that became much more, there was a better sound. And for me, I found it more fulfilling and the songs, I felt like it was great fun to sing them as well. I mean, I really enjoyed being in that band and it was great fun. And those guys are all my really good friends and, that's never going to go away. And
yeah, and you were saying about like yourself and Marco and some of the others are on one of the recordings on Alex's just released album. So it's not like...
No, I think it was tricky when it was a tricky thing to finish because I think if you've been doing something like that for that long and especially since I was kind of like the front woman, for me to take a step back, it was basically like saying, well, sorry guys, that's it. So there's never really an easy way of saying that. And so it was a little bit difficult at first, but I think once Alex realised that he actually probably is better off doing his own thing, I think he's better off doing his own thing. I think he's doing really well with his music and I love his new material and I feel like he's really expressing himself in the way without limits, not having me shooting down his ideas or, you know what I mean? So I feel like he's in a far better position. I feel liberated in that I feel I can write what I want in the way that I want for me and for my musical sensibility too. And so that's a very liberating thing for me as well. I've really enjoyed being in that band and, all the experiences we had together and the places we went and all the things we did together, it was great. So. And
I guess also, in a way, then although there can be a negative in this as well because you don't necessarily give people exactly what they expect, but I guess there's a lot of people out there who have already fallen in love with your voice and certain things that you brought to the whole equation, who are like going, good new stuff, new stuff. And
no, I'm really lucky actually. In fact, I've got some really lovely people out there who have been amazing fans and supporters of what we've been doing, and a lot of them have come along and are also supporting Alex and what he's doing, but have taken an interest in what I'm doing, and I'm extremely grateful. And I think that's a really nice position to be in, to have pretty much a ready-made crowd of people that are interested in what you're doing, actually want to hear it. I feel very lucky to have that. So yeah, that's pretty amazing, really. Yeah.
Just before I came here, I was listening to Yoko Ono on Desert Island Discs. It's about 15 years ago. And I think it's great. I think it's a really good Desert Island Disc.
I'll have to listen to it.
And I'm a big fan of Yoko. I'm a big fan of, in a way actually, I just had a little thought in my head while I was about to say this, I'm also a big fan of Linda. And I think a lot of Beatles fans almost had a problem that Paul and John both married these like really strong, interesting, intelligent women. Well, the done thing almost felt that, you just get, and I don't mean this to be dismissive of any particular individual, but there was a perception you very often rock stars, a bit like footballs, would just be marrying someone who would look good on their arm or something like that. And I think Yoko's also an example of something that sometimes happens with strong women. And I think part of the equation is that people felt in some way that she stole John Lennon away from them and away from this thing that he was part of. I think quite a lot of strong women artists can become almost villainized or sort of in a way that doesn't usually, I think, happen with male performers or artists.
I would absolutely agree with that. Yeah, I think it's just part of the unfortunate way that our culture has developed, over the years. And I think women have always been expected, have very often been, whether they like it or not, put into a position of, I suppose the same value has not been given to their artistic expression as to men's. If they're in, I suppose I'm not really formulating this very well, but I totally get what you're saying. I think it's almost seen threatening to the kind of status quo, I think. And I think women that are seen as threatening at all are kind of quite often tried to be pushed down.
Yeah, I mean, it's in religion, I guess, and everything.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't even think it's conscious a lot of the time. I think it's a kind of subconscious thing that people do or have done in the past. I think things are slowly changing, and I think that's a good thing. And I think things will get better, and I think that general equality, I hope, will become a reality for people.
I mean, the other role I think very often people often see in music is the woman who is there to be an extension of the man's vision, or to be the muse and just the muse, but doesn't actually have anything themselves. So it feels still to me that a lot of the time that women are kind of typecast into, if you're not that one, the one who just stands there and nothing against playing a tambourine and going sha-la-la occasionally, that can be a very valuable thing. And,
absolutely.
But that role, and I was thinking about it, I was playing in a large ensemble band, and then listening to Yoko, and I was kind of thinking about just the perception, I think, of men in kind of groups of musicians, and how that's sort of seen and judged.
Yeah, I think it is it's still a very male world, I think. For if you're a musician and you're a woman, I think you are in the minority, or at least you're perceived to be in the minority. It's very much, when I look, quite often me and Marco end up having a little row because I kind of maybe I've had a few wines and I'm like, why are we always watching men on telly? It's like, well, actually, I really love it. That's why. And then I'm like, well, actually, I really love it too. But
you love those Bruce Willis films.
Not just that, but not just films. Like if we're watching music videos, or like, oh, let's listen back to this, or let's watch this festival, or whatever. I'm like, oh God, yeah, here I am watching. Oh, it's a bunch of guys again. Oh, it's a bunch of guys again. Oh, it's a bunch of guys again. And they're all brilliant, and I love them, and I love listening to their music. But it's just it's a big gap. There's not that many. Especially if you go back to like the period that I love watching, like 60s, 70s stuff. There are exceptions, of course. Like you've got Curved Air, and you've got Joni Mitchell and Grace Slick and all the regular.
Behind the scenes, you've got Carol Kays and Carol Kings and Ellie Greenwich.
Loads. So it's just that kind of it's kind of just so kind of accepted. I think just back then, especially, it was much more of a kind of cultural norm to be a guy in that in the music industry. And especially as well, like ugly guys too. Like you can't be an ugly woman and be a singer. You've got to be pretty. Especially back then, you can't be a sort of an ugly woman.
Well, I think if you are, that's commented on.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
In a way that it's not commented on if you're, you're as I am, a sort of overweight chap with not the straightest teeth in the world. I will probably get away with that in a way that a woman the same age as me would not have. That would have, and there was plenty of reviewers who would comment on the way female artists who were my contemporaries looked in a way that they would never comment on any of us.
Absolutely, and I think again that's to do with the idea of what is a woman. What's she meant to be? Is she meant to be eye candy? Is she meant to be an accessory? Is she meant to be there to, it's just, you could go on and on. I find it kind of baffling and kind of, it makes me so angry. I can't even, I'm actually like...
I know, sorry. I didn't want this to be a political thing.
No, not at all.
Because I find myself fighting in the corner very often of people like Yoko, because people still are so, Yoko, And you're like, personally, and probably will get complaints about this, I sort of think Yoko brought more to John than John brought to Yoko.
Well, that's interesting, isn't it? Because, for all my sins, I still haven't really looked into Yoko that much, and I should. But then I hadn't looked into the Beatles for a long time. I never really... it's only the last couple of years that I've really started getting into the Beatles, because I was one of those people who's like, oh, yeah, the Beatles, everyone knows they're famous, whatever. And then I've really started listening to Paul McCartney a lot, and then I've been really interested in Linda and her, and just sort of you start taking an interest. I've not got onto John yet, but once I get onto John, I'll probably get onto Yoko. But see, I'll have to look at John first before I look at Yoko.
Yeah, it's not even, I think, just that everything she brought was necessarily to John was musically. I think to his whole way of being able to see the world and embrace things from the avant-garde and things that he probably had been suspicious of before.
Absolutely.
But Paul was pretty open to, but and George was open to different things through, I guess, the kind of his interest in India and stuff like that. But I think sometimes, although John definitely had some surreal leanings, he was quite suspicious, I think, of the avant-garde.
Yeah.
And I think Yoko
helped him.
And also just changed the way, he perceived the world more maybe than the other way around. I think Yoko was Yoko before she met John.
Oh, absolutely.
But John became John Ono Lennon by meeting her. He kind of grew.
And that's a wonderful thing. I wish I could be less suspicious of the avant-garde. I still haven't managed to get my head around it.
Well, some people would associate you and pre-Trembling Bells, there was a kind of improvisational stuff which people would very much see as being from the avant-garde or part of the avant-garde. Yeah,
they would, So Alex and I were doing a project together called Directing Hands. I'm still suspicious of the avant-garde because he made me do it. He did. We were in a studio. We were going to do a session. He was meant to be recording with Will Oldham, and Will couldn't come for some reason. So we still had the studio time with Anna Chiang down at, I can't remember the name of the studio, down in London. And he's like, well, we've got this time. We should do something, And I was like, well, what are we going to do? He's like, well, I'll play the drums and you just sing, Just sing. I was like, what do you mean just sing? It's just express yourself, I'll play the drums and you just respond. I was like, right, okay. I'm not sure about this. But I kind of went for it. I thought, fuck it. I'm just going to go for it. And I'm just going to do whatever the fuck I want. And I did. And it was a very cathartic experience. And we made a record. Some of it we used, I used my harp and put it through an effects pedal and stuff. And it was a very interesting thing for me to do because I hadn't really done anything like that before. But I wouldn't listen back to it. Definitely not. And I wouldn't watch it. I'd maybe watch it, but I wouldn't listen to a recording of it. And I certainly never listened back to it. I think it sounds awful. I think it sounds absolutely awful.
But experiencing it, do you feel there was things that were valuable from that?
I think experiencing it as a singer or a producer of what I was doing, I suppose that is an interesting experience for me, the performer. But for a listener, I'm not so sure. It's one of those things where, I don't know, I can't really go and watch that kind of music either. I just don't appreciate it. And I like to hear a melody. I like to hear something I can hook onto. I like to hear chords and music. And it's a bit like I suppose it's the same with painting as well. I like to see something beautiful or horrible or something. What I find really difficult to understand is something that I can't make sense of, like, I suppose like a brick or something. And someone says that's a piece of art. And I say, no, it's not, it's a brick. But this is why I don't understand conceptual art, or this is why I had to drop out of Glasgow School of Art, because I couldn't take it. To me, it's the Emperor's New Clothes. To me, it's like, but then that's me probably not really getting it, like my art teacher always said, you're a bit into, so your appreciation of art is like Britney Spears. You like the equivalent of Britney Spears. I was like, what?
She was very successful.
She was? Well, there we go. But I'd love to be more into the avant-garde. If I could just have someone unlock a little in my brain for me to appreciate it, I'd probably be happy. I don't know. One day maybe it will happen.
I think the thing is, I think very, very melodious music, to a certain extent, is avant-garde, because it's like a language that, again, it's not for the brain or whatever. It kind of goes to this other place. It's not like the thing of, I don't like bad lyrics, but music for me is the important language.
Yeah.
And it says all these incredible things and paints all these colours, a bit like lighting can do and colours can do. And so in some ways I think, well, melody and music and harmony and all these things, they are of the avant-garde to me.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to be, sorry.
That's very good.
Well, that was quite nice actually. But I don't think it'll be a hit. But I actually think that these things, things that sometimes people sneer about, like people sometimes sneer at McCartney because the melody is same as Richard Rodgers, but was so great with melody and harmony and using counter melodies and really interesting things that the bass parts are doing, and they can be kind of sneerful of that. And I go, that's not just like dumb, corny stuff. That's like profoundly deep stuff. It's going to touch people who don't understand a word that's being said.
Absolutely, yeah. I think, and I totally agree with you about the lyrics. I mean, if you have bad lyrics, mea culpa. But I mean, bad lyrics, yeah, they can. See, even if you had bad lyrics, but you had this beautiful music underneath it, you don't get drawn to the lyrics. You get drawn. I always listen to the music before I listen to anything else. Like if you're listening to a record or anything, it's always the music that catches my ear. It's not the words. I don't really care about the words so much. If the words are great, brilliant, that's a bonus, you know. But for me, it's the instrumental music. It's the melody and all that. It's the whole feeling, the whole kind of world that you get sucked into, because it's a journey. You know, you when you listen to a really beautiful, I don't know if you find this, but when you listen to a really amazing piece of music, it takes you into, you imagine where that is, you imagine the world, you imagine the colours and the scenery and everything. Or it might, you know, I feel like it's the most transporting kind of form for me of art that there is. You know, if there was one thing, if I had to lose, well, I don't know, I don't want to lose any of my sights, you know, but I think to be able to hear and to be able to appreciate music is just wonderful. And because, as you say, it is just so kind of like, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's interesting.
I mean, Brian Wilson sort of said at one point he wanted people to feel loved when you listen to his music.
Oh, that's a lovely thing to say.
And I think, well, he had a very troubled childhood with a very brutal father and things like that. And his brutal father would become like a very loving, gentle creature when he heard beautiful music.
Oh.
And I think he found salvation in music. I'm not a believer of any particular God, but I feel very moved and touched sometimes but when I hear church music.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, so and it feels like, yeah, it's a genuinely spiritual thing. It takes you to a place where you can feel kind of loved or safe and kind of moved and some sort of connection to the universe.
Absolutely. And it's the same with the way that music can take you back to your childhood or take you back to specific times and specific memories. Like there's one particular one. I was really overjoyed when I finally discovered what this melody was. I had memories of lying in my bed, looking at the curtains and the light coming through, hearing my dad mowing the lawn in the garden and having this feeling of safety, and hearing this TV theme tune coming up from downstairs, which always meant I had to be in bed by that time.
Yeah.
And it turned out it was the Diary of Adrian Mole of all things.
Oh, wow, that's
so, which was it Ian Jury that recorded that?
I think it was, yeah. And it was, I'm trying to, what was the girl called? It was
Pandora.
Pandora. It was a song
about
Pandora.
Out in love with Pandora. La, 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 ba, ba, bum. But I always had that thing. I was like, what's this thing about Pandora and this melody? Where's it come from? I was like, I'll go onto YouTube. When things started happening on YouTube, and then I found it. I was like, oh, that's what it was. No, it's interesting because that kind of little thing had been going around in my head and brought me back to that place and this kind of, which is really bizarre actually, but this happy place. So when I hear that music, it makes me have that feeling. It's weird. It's this feeling. It's like nothing else. It's so weird how these things can trigger those feelings. I
have that thing with almost one of the points, because there's different points I say, oh, that was the start of my journey towards making music and things. But one of them was definitely, when I was probably around about 5, I heard the theme tune to The Adventures of Robinson Crusoe.
Oh, yeah.
And, people can go and search for that. And it's this incredible piece of music. And I would hear it every summer holidays. And I would look forward to not so much the programme and the content of the programme, but the intro theme and the score music behind the stuff that was going on. And it made me feel really sad, but I liked it.
But you liked it. Yeah.
And I thought, this makes me feel kind of sad, but it feels beautiful.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think so much of art that I've been drawn to has a kind of combination of that kind of beauty and poignancy.
Yeah, for sure. The poignancy, definitely. It's the wistfulness of looking back. For me, I think a lot of what I love about music that makes me feel a bit sad as well is that wistfulness of time gone by, the passage of time, the relentless march of time onwards, and the lost past that you can't retrieve, or that you want to go visit again, or you want to, the memory of places that you like to see again, or you can hear the music and it takes you back to that place. It's a wonderful kind of transporter in that way. And the wistfulness it's almost like you're trying to grab at some reality of something. I don't quite know how to express it. Yeah.
No, is it almost like, I sometimes wonder if what we're trying to do is we're trying to preserve, I mean, part of the tragedy of kind of, I think, human existence is everything that brings us joy. Even if it ends up with a completely happy ending, you know, a couple who were in love and together, you know, for 75 years and they died within minutes of each other. Mm-hmm. Ultimately, everything that brings us joy and happiness and value in our life is of a transient nature.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, and I wonder partly is one of the things we try to do as artists, and you may agree or disagree with this, is are we trying to preserve these things so something of these things will always exist?
I think maybe without realising it. Yeah. I think, when you're creating something, you're creating something is outside of yourself, I guess. So when you're gone, that might still be there in some form. You're not because you want to be left. I suppose when you're making something, you want to share something. Yeah, I guess. What do you do it for, actually? It's a very good point. It's like, I suppose you do it because you want to.
You want to make a connection.
Yeah, you want to make a connection. Yeah, I think so. And what I love about listening to things from, I suppose, years and years and years and years and years and years and years ago, or pieces of very old music, is you think, well, look, that was written by somebody at some point, sitting down, writing something on a piece of paper, something that's from their mind has now been heard 700 years later, and it's still there. Or a piece of, I suppose, if you look at cave painting, to take it all the way back to that, that's from thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago. Somebody, for some reason, decided to paint a picture of some, whatever it is, bison or whatever animals they are getting hunted. Or the rock art up at the back of Marco's. There's the Cocknose Stone, and all around there, there's all this amazing... We've recently been sort of getting into going on the walks up the hills there, and you can't escape it. You go onto any big kind of rock around there, and you find cup and ring marks, and you think, well, why have people done this? But it's still there. There's still this... Who knows what it was for?
Yeah. I know I hear things or see art from another time, and I feel sometimes a deep connection, but I don't feel sometimes when I'm sitting on a bus with a bunch of people who are living in the same place in the same time as me.
Yep.
And of course, maybe if I got to know them, I would feel that connection. But
yeah, for sure. And I think also I feel so alienated from a lot of the contemporary kind of like pop music, I suppose you'd call it, that you hear on the radio, that you're blasted, this formulaic kind of continual kind of just abuse of the ear. Like, I don't know how else to put it. The same white kind of overproduced, tinny, kind of repetitive, kind of same. Do you know what? I just cannot stand it. And like, it doesn't matter. Even when you put the telly on and you watch the adverts, all the adverts sound the same. They've all got the same formula. They all have the same kind of soundscape. I actually started talking to Michael last night about a really good advert we should do. Like, we'll work on like just maybe 2 tones and like just a couple of words, said a few things, and that's it, dead quiet, and everyone has to look at it because everything else is so fucking in your face, you know. It's so much, it's so quick, it's so throwaway, it's so plastic, it's so pretend, it's all for money. There's no genuine kind of feeling in anything, or if there is, it's been lost a long time ago. Like, I actually hate it so much that it makes me so angry. Again,
it makes you want to offer an alternative.
Well,
you have a new album coming out.
Yeah, sorry, yeah. So,
no.
Yeah, and no, I mean, there's loads of really amazing music being made at the moment as well. Of course there is. I'm just talking about the kind of stuff you have on at the gym, or the stuff. Oh, the worst thing is going along to a kind of fitness class. I had to walk out the last one I went to. I went to go to. I was trying to get fit. I think it was called box. No, it wasn't Boxercise. Oh, a Body Attack.
Wow.
And I went in, and everyone was around the outside of the room. They were getting ready. They've got the step one's copy. I was going to get my step. They've got a step. Right, they've got one of those raw mats. I'll get a raw mat. And then the lady who was leading it started putting the music on, and it was just unbearable. It was so loud. It was so awful. It had one of those chipmunk voices over the top, sort of going like sort of thing, and I just had to leave. I just thought, you know what? I cannot cope with this, as well as the pain of having to go through like severe exercise, and this on top is too much.
Yeah, I agree with what you were saying about when there is so much great new stuff out, but I guess it's the fact that a lot of the stuff that gets pushed to the front, not just in music, but in cinema and in mainstream television and things, isn't necessarily... It seems to be the stuff that's been put together by committee just for the thing of, well, how many dollars is this guaranteed to make? There's no risk. It's a formula, as you said. But I want to talk about, you've got a new record about to to get out there, and hopefully this time next year, that's what people will be listening to in gyms. Do you want to tell us about the...
So I've got. Thank you for asking about that, because I'm really excited about it, and I feel really proud of the way it's sounding. It's called Muggington Lane End, and yeah, it's a mixture of kind of songs that are kind of, I suppose, songs I've written at the piano that are kind of, some of them quite wistful songs, and some of them are kind of more upbeat songs. Some of them are about characters. Some of them are about a kind of journey. There's one song that kind of goes on for 7 minutes. I suppose that's kind of a prog, call that a prog song, I guess. Some of them are shorter and kind of more kind of sensible, I suppose. But yeah, I'm really, really happy with it. Marco's on it, doing some really amazing guitar, and Seb, I love working with Seb on the drums. He's an amazing drummer. You know, he's so easy to work with, and he gets everything just like that, and he adds so much expression to what we're doing. And Jim's amazing on the bass as well. So it's great fun, and it's been a lot of fun putting it together and recording it. Marco's been amazing. Like, I love working with him on the recordings.
Yeah, I mean, he's incredible in the studio. It's just like the level of energy, and also let's do this idea and let's do it now.
Yeah, let's do this now, and let's do another one just to make sure we've got a safety one. And now I want you to try this, and we'll try this, and we'll try this. And hey, I'm just going to go upstairs and grab this other guitar because that'll sound better. And why don't we try this? And you need to put some flutes on that. We'll just do it on MIDI now. Get the MIDI keyboards out, right? Do that now. Do it now. Do another one. What about another one? You know, and you're just like,
I like immediate recording.
Yeah, it's brilliant. It's really, because I don't really like the process of having to do something lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of times, and then it's just so...
You lose magic.
Yeah, totally. It's great to have things fresh, and then you might come back to something, like there's a couple of recordings that we came back to, like, actually we'll re-record it now because we played it on tour, it sounds better, it's got more of a feeling to it, it's just much better than when we recorded it initially. And I don't mind doing that because you think, well, actually it is. But yeah, there's something really great about just doing like a quick version of something, like that first single that I released, the Waiting for Tomorrow single, that I just did a live vocal with the guitar, and it's just one live vocal all the way through, and we just did it, and that was it. It's like, oh, it sounds fine, we'll just stick with it. I'm not going to overanalyze it and look at, maybe I sang a bit out of tune there, or piece another wee bit in, you know.
Sometimes I guess technical things that are so technically correct aren't always necessarily better, and I think that's one thing for younger artists always to bear in mind.
Definitely, yeah. I think, you know, because you hear a bit of the human, you hear the personality, you know, you hear the kind of, you've got, because I was definitely guilty when I was much younger of criticising anything that I didn't like, you know. I used to, when I first met Alex of the Bells, and now his own project, Alex Rex, he used to listen to a lot of, well, avant-garde first, like, I suppose, like noise music, but then he also got really into folk music, and I used to listen to these voices, and I'd just be like,
sometimes the harmonies are so wide.
I was just like, they can't really sing, Alex, you know, that singer. And I remember saying that about Lal Waterson, of all people, like Waterson's, and I'd be like, I don't like her singing, you know, she sounds a bit Yorkshire, and all this stuff that I really love now, you know, think, she's got a beautiful voice, and I love the way she sings. But I think that was just maybe coming from a very kind of, you have to sing a certain way when you're a classical singer, and you have to, and I suppose I've been trying to move away from that as much as possible and find my own voice, and I think that makes you appreciate other people's voices more. And instead of like being this really kind of rather idiotic, stupid girl that couldn't appreciate things, I kind of, hopefully a little bit more open-minded.
I think you're being a bit, you know, perhaps a wee bit harsh on your former self here.
No, I don't think I am. I don't think I am at all. I think I was an idiot. So. Oh well.
Anyway, so you've got some dates coming up.
Yes.
You want to, because you're going to do some. You're going to do a song for us, but tell us about your date, your dates that you've got coming up.
Yeah, so tomorrow, actually, so that won't be tomorrow because it'll be
in the past. So you can't go to this one unless you've got a
unless you're psychic. Yeah. So the 11th of April, we're playing in Cardiff at Wales Goes Pop. So I'm doing like a tour. 2020. So Wales Goes Pop Festival in Cardiff on the 11th, and Todmorden The Golden Lion on the 12th, and that's also with Simon Shaw's band Dragged Up. They're playing, and Mike Hastings is doing a wee set as well. So it's most of the Bells, but Alex couldn't make it. So then 13th of April, we're playing at the Kitchen Garden Cafe in Birmingham. 14th of April, we're doing a session on Mark Riley Six Music, and then we're playing at the Castle Manchester that night. So that'll be interesting. Trying to skip between those. 15th, Leicester the Musician. 16th, we're playing at Glastonbury Red Brick Building. That's a charity gig for Children's World. And then 17th of April, we're playing at Chelmsford, the Hot Box, I think it's called. So There we go, that's it.
Great.
And then in May, we've got a couple of dates. 1st and 2nd of May, we're playing at Glad Cafe and West of Scotland Amateur Boat Club, Greenock with Linny Carson. So,
and I know there's going to be lots more.
There'll be lots more,
because
yeah.
you tend to do a lot of stuff. But right now, there's time for a song.
Okay, so I'm going to try and play a song now. I've been talking. I feel like I kind of feel wired actually after talking so much last time.
Thanks very much for
thank you.
talking. It was great to, because I feel like I've known you for a while, but it's always good to just get to know you a little bit better.
Well, thank you. Well, thank you for your lovely questions, and thanks for listening, and thanks for listening to me ranting on. So this song is called "Hold On to Your Love," and it's fairly self-explanatory, really.
Okay.
What has become of the summer? The gate on the year half closed. I stood in the hallway and froze. Unopened the letter I chose. Monday, a week from tomorrow, became yesterday in disguise. I stared at my age in surprise as years fell around, years fell around, years fell around my eyes. It's hard to remember the stories and fairy tales told by my bed, but I remember the way that she said, I love you, and kissed me instead. The crack in the mirror foreboding, but 7 years later in bloom, I wept at the melting moon. Oh, death always comes, death always comes, death always comes too soon. Hold on to your love, don't let it fade away. Hold on to your love until your dying day. Hold on to your love, what is given is taken away. Hold on to your love, hold on, come what may. Hold on to your love until your dying day.
Thank you. Very good advice. Hold on to your love. And if there's someone next to you you love, remember to tell them. Thank you very much, Lavinia.
Hats off.
Yeah,
Saluting.
saluting. Bye.
Bye.